Despite having one of the richest gun lockers in cinema, one of the most creative movie poster designs, and one of the best intro scenes from any gun movie ever, Lord of War didn't garner nearly as much popularity as it rightly should have. This brilliant movie is nothing like your average gun flick. There's almost no gun action, no meticulously choreographed shootouts, and no heroics, but it nevertheless keeps you on the edge of your seat from the first minute. Offering an incredible dive into the world of illegal gun trading, it does something better than just shooting. It gives the gun a personality. Every firearm in the movie is a character, and just like actual people, Yuri Orlov, played fantastically by Nicolas Cage, uses them to get a step ahead in life. Which gun says the most about him though? The one that kickstarted his journey, the one that made him rich, or the ones that almost killed him? Today, we're breaking down this underrated classic. The way Yuri puts it, making your first gun sale is a lot like losing your virginity. You have no idea what you're doing, but it's exciting and over way too fast. The very first firearms Yuri sells are a pair of micro Uzis. This is also one of the first mistakes in this movie. Although we don't have a clear timeline of what's happening and when, we know that Yuri travels to Lebanon sometime after selling the Uzis to Russian criminals in order to seize the firearms left behind by peacekeeping troops. Yuri says he went to Lebanon after the bombing of the US Embassy in Beirut, which happened in September of 1984. The micro Uzi, however, didn't start production until 1986, which means that Yuri definitely couldn't have acquired it. The original Uzi prototype was finished in 1950 by Israel Military Industries, and the IDF introduced it into service in 1954. As the micro part of the name suggests, the micro Uzi is significantly smaller than the original at 14 inches in length with the folded stock, while the original is about 18.5 inches long. It also has a 4.6-inch barrel, which is less than half of the original 10.2 inches, while the original packs more than double the weight at 7.7 pounds in comparison to the Micro's 3.3 pounds. Unlike the original, the Micro Uzi has a closed bolt and it fires twice as quickly at around 1,200 rounds per minute. Because of its compact size, it's a great personal defense weapon, often used by security personnel. In the movie, Yuri says,
"You could pump a mag into me right now and never wake the guy in the next room."
And although we don't know the acoustics of the room they're in and how accurate that statement is, Uzis really aren't that loud when suppressed. So it's possible that the guy in the other room wouldn't hear it. Yuri's brother Vitali Orlov, played by Jared Leto, carries a Beretta 92 SB throughout the film. Interestingly and symbolically noteworthy, Yuri doesn't actually use a firearm at any point in the movie, at least not willingly. Vitali is his muscle, essentially, and he uses his Beretta to protect Yuri and himself on several occasions. The SB variant introduces the slide-mounted safety and the internal firing pin block to the 92 series. The SB stands for safety block in Italian. Another big change is the mag release button, which was inconveniently placed at the bottom of the grip with the original 92 and 92S models. It is nowadays a relatively rare gun because it was only in production from 1980 to 1984, and it was briefly used by the US Air Force, as well as several branches of the Italian police. The most prominent firearm in the movie is by far the AK-47. Yuri's description of it is one of the best introductions of any firearm in any movie ever.
"A weapon all fighters love. An elegantly simple 9-pound amalgamation of forged steel and plywood. It doesn't break, jam, or overheat. It will shoot whether it's covered in mud or filled with sand. It's so easy, even a child can use it." And they do. The Soviets put the gun on a coin. Mozambique put it on their flag.
Yuri is actually wrong when he says that the Soviets put the Kalashnikov on a coin. They didn't, but Mozambique did. Mozambique loves the Kalashnikov so much, the country put the gun on its flag, and since the coat of arms is pressed on the coins, they have the AK-47 on the coin too. According to the Mozambican constitution, the AK represents defense. Many guns of the Kalashnikov family were used during the Mozambique War of Independence, which ended in 1974, and AKMs are even part of their military arsenal today. The gun can also be found on the coat of arms of East Timor, Zimbabwe, and the old coat of arms of Burkina Faso. The gun retained such a high level of respect that the Russians raised a 30-foot monument to the gun and the man behind it, and the name itself became so popular and synonymous with high-quality products that the Kalashnikov family licensed their family name for use in marketing. You can nowadays buy Kalashnikov umbrellas, watches, knives, and even a Kalashnikov vodka if you want to get crazy with the boys. That's how legendary the name itself became. The thing about the AK-47 is that the M16 is an assault rifle, the H&K G36 is an assault rifle too, but the Kalashnikov is the assault rifle. It's arguably the most iconic firearm ever created, and the reason it's so popular is that it checks all the boxes that needed checking at the time of its creation. First designed in 1947 by the genius engineer Mikhail Kalashnikov, the gun proved extremely reliable, accurate, easy to clean and maintain, and very cheap to produce. Most importantly, it's incredibly easy to use. The way Yuri puts it, it's so simple a child could use it, and they often do, which is unfortunately historically accurate. The standard fixed stock model is 35 inches long with a 16.3-inch barrel chambered for 7.62 by 39mm rounds. It weighs just under 8.5 pounds with a steel magazine with semi-auto and full auto firing options at 600 rounds per minute. It's effective at over 1,000 feet, and in the hands of the right person, it does not miss. According to tests that the US military conducted, the Kalashnikov's accuracy drops no lower than 82% even at 1,300 feet. Why was the gun so damn popular, people wonder, and the answer comes in 3 parts. First of all, it was and still is extremely reliable and durable. Rusty bolt because you left it in the rain? You can literally kick it and it'll work fine. It's also very unlikely that a clean AK-47 will ever jam because the cases are extremely tapered. The 7.62 by 39 rounds were chosen because the SKS, which wasn't yet in production but it was already designed at the time, was also chambered in this round. The extreme slant of the case means that there's much less friction between it and the chamber wall when extracting the casing. The design also gives the gun more tolerance for dirt in comparison to other assault rifles. Now, can you exactly stick it in the mud and still fire the way Yuri tells it in the movie? Maybe not, but surely if you dropped 100 AK-47s in a mud pit and tried firing them, not all of them would jam. There are reports from Vietnam of AK family guns firing without a hitch after spending months buried in the jungle, and there are also reports of AKs surviving weapon stockpile bombings during the post-Yugoslav wars. The second reason it's so popular is that it's incredibly easy to maintain. There are only 8 moving parts, and history has shown that illiterate, uneducated paramilitary members had no trouble disassembling and reassembling the gun. This is the Toyota Camry of guns. It's super reliable, and even if you break something, it's usually a very simple fix. The third reason behind its popularity is that it's so incredibly easy to produce. At the time, the USSR treated weapons as disposable items, and it needed millions of firearms as it prepared for war with the United States, a war that happened thankfully and for arming countries in proxy wars. The exact number of AK-47s and other weapons in the family is unclear, but according to approximations, there were at least 100 million AK family weapons in the world in 2004, which amounted to 20% of all firearms in the world at the time. At least 75 out of those 100 million pieces were AK-47s. On top of that, dozens of countries designed and produced their own iterations of the AK-47, which means that there are millions of other AK-like weapons in the world, albeit without proper licensing. All in all, it's easier to list the countries that didn't use the Kalashnikov than the ones that did. It was used by militaries, special forces, paramilitaries, rebel groups, terrorists, cartels, bank robbers, hitmen, police forces, and even hunters. This movie's explanation of how the AK-47 spread around the world is very accurate. Aside from the USSR arming their allies, the AK-47 and its children were easy to get out of formerly Soviet warehouses after the fall of the Soviet Union. Gun traffickers, such as Yuri, would then sell hundreds of thousands or even millions of Kalashnikovs to groups that couldn't get their hands on them legally. Kalashnikovs flooded the markets in some places in Africa so much that you could acquire one on the market for about $5, with black market prices in Africa rarely exceeding $100 in Africa in the 1990s. With a transgenerational legendary reputation built on pillars of reliability, ease of use, and ease of maintenance, the AK-47 keeps aura farming to this day, and its representation in Lord of War was fantastic. The movie itself starts with the journey of an AK-47 round from an ammo factory in Russia to the round being fired in Africa, all from the round's POV. The AK is Yuri's truest business partner in the movie. It's cheap, reliable, easy to acquire, and easy to sell. He makes millions just from AK sales. The most fantastic AK in the movie is Andre Baptiste Jr.'s custom-made AK-47. You might think this is an AK MSU, but the armorers actually explained that it was a custom-made gun using the parts of an AK-47, an AKM, a Lee Enfield, a Vector R4, and a Saiga rifle. Shout out to Firearms for creating this incredible gun and to IMFDB for getting to the bottom of its origins. The first rule of gun running is don't get shot with your own merchandise, Yuri explains as he gets shot with a Glock 17. The guns are intended for a Colombian narco boss who clearly isn't interested in a long-term, healthy business relationship with Yuri, and there's actually a hidden mistake in this scene. The Glock used to shoot Yuri is a third-generation Glock 17. There are finger grooves and a thumb relief on the grip, which didn't exist with the second-generation models. Since the scene takes place in the late 80s and this generation didn't start production until the 90s, it's anachronistic. The bottom two Glocks in this still are third generation, which is impossible. These guns contrast Yuri's reliance on Soviet weapons. It's kind of a conflict between Eastern and Western philosophies. Up next, we have the S&W 686. Now, you'd think that a guy like Andre Baptiste Sr., a warlord obsessed with power, might buy it as a statement gun, the same way some guys just have to drive huge trucks even though they've never transported construction equipment in their life. But it's actually Yuri who forces him to buy it. While examining the gun, Andre shoots one of his own soldiers who was flirting with a girl instead of doing his job, and as Yuri says it, it's a used gun now, you have to buy it. Andre pulls the reverse Uno card on Yuri later on when he pretty much forces him to kill his biggest competitor, who also murdered Yuri's uncle earlier in the movie with the very same gun. This scene also outlines the fact that Yuri is somewhat of a coward, even though he hides it behind a facade of moral righteousness as he refuses to kill, but he's more than happy to secure killing tools for madmen. As Andre says in the movie, all Yuri has to do is say stop and the trigger won't be pulled. But Yuri actually wants the man dead, he just doesn't have the stomach to do it himself. The gun that does the deed is a Smith Wesson 686, which is the stainless steel version of the 586 model. Chambered for the .357 Magnum cartridge, this is a very powerful gun. The gun of a dictator. The variant we see in the movie has a 6-round cylinder and a 6-inch barrel, but the Plus variant, which was introduced in 1996, has a 7-shot cylinder. We also get to see a German Kar-98K in the hands of an Afghan Mujahideen fighter. And if you're wondering what the hell is a Kar-98 doing in Afghanistan, you're completely right, it shouldn't be there. There is no record of Mujahideen fighters ever getting their hands on K-98Ks. The gun did, however, spread all around, similar to the Kalashnikov. The Germans left so many of them after the war that they were bound to spread afterwards. The Soviets sent them to Chinese communists during the Korean War, and they were even used in Iraq after 2003. Why are they in Afghanistan in this movie? We have no idea. Maybe they're supposed to symbolize how later conflicts became the firearm dumping grounds for history's leftovers. Nevertheless, even if the Mujahideen had used them, they would have served them well. Kar-98Ks are incredibly reliable guns. Yuri sells machine guns too, with Andre Baptiste Jr. specifically asking for the gun of Rambo.
Can you bring me the gun of Rambo?
Part 1, 2, or 3?
I've only seen part 1.
The M60. Would you like the armor-piercing bullets?
Please.
We specifically talked about this scene in our First Blood video, which we highly recommend you take a look at if you haven't already, and it's just a testament as to how legendary the M60 is in the hands of Sylvester Stallone. Although it wasn't as popular with African rebel groups as some other machine guns, such as the PKM, the M60 did see some action in Lebanon and with the extremist group Lord's Resistance Army in Central and East Africa. Yuri makes good on his promise, and the junior dictator does get his dream gun by the end of the movie. That's the soundtrack of African warlords right there. In this scene, they're on their way to broker a deal with the RUF, a rebel group from Sierra Leone, which we talked about extensively in our Blood Diamond video. And since these two movies take place in roughly the same period, it's fun to think about Yuri Orlov supplying the guns Danny Archer uses in the movie. The most recognizable insurgent weapon in cinema, the RPG-7, is another big seller for Yuri's business. Similar to the AK-47, it spreads all around the world because it's cheap to produce and there are millions of units in circulation, it's portable and easy to use with devastating effects. We did a deep breakdown of the RPG and the history of Soviet firearms spreading around the world in our Black Hawk Down video on Patreon, so make sure to check that out if you're interested. In this movie, the way Yuri transports the RPG-7 is both crazy dangerous and incredibly unrealistic. If you take a look at the right side of the screen, you'll see that he's transporting the RPGs loaded and stacked upright for some reason as well. Unless you're a complete idiot, you would never transport an RPG with the grenade actually loaded. Also, this scene in which the locals swarm the plane to grab all the guns, the RPG-7 among them, is a sad but accurate commentary on the state of affairs in Africa, which is still apparent today. But it's also a testament to the RPG, which isn't only a gun, it's an icon of African battlefields. Many other guns make an appearance in the movie, and interestingly, at least 3,000 real guns were used in the movie because they were much easier to resell later on than props. On top of that, the T-72 tanks we see during Yuri's visit to the Ukrainian base are real. The crew actually had to notify NATO of their scene in advance, otherwise the crew would have looked like a mobilizing militia through satellite images. So many of them were made that it was cheaper to pay for the real thing than use CGI. Among other important gun moments, we also have Yuri buying M16A2s by the pound. This is a mistake since these are surplus guns from Lebanon, and the A2 wasn't in service when the Marines were shipping out for Lebanon in 1982. It was actually introduced a year later. The A1 was the primary firearm for the Marines in Lebanon at the time, and all the guns in this scene should be A1s. On top of it being the wrong firearm, the production also used AR-15s in place of some M16s. The guns you see in this still, which are supposed to be AK-47s stacked in a warehouse, are actually Czechoslovakian SAVZ-58 assault rifles. They're extremely similar in profile to the Kalashnikov, and given the color contrast in this scene, you can't really tell the difference, so this doesn't break immersion. This movie is also made better by a gun that we basically never see in movies, the Henry US Survival Rifle. Yuri's survival rifle has a stainless steel finish, and it's equipped with a reflex sight. This is a very rare gun. It's a survival gun intended for hikers and campers because it's pretty tiny when broken down, and when you think about it, it's kind of weird that Yuri would even sell this gun. The director probably added it as an enrichment to Yuri's gun library, but why would anyone in an active conflict want an 822 LR gun whose most appealing quality is the fact that it floats when you drop it in water? Nevertheless, it's still in the movie and it's pretty cool. These guns are the building blocks of Yuri's empire, and for our Patreon supporters, we also prepared a deep dive into a few more obscure weapons we see in the movie. Aside from access to our extended videos, a Patreon subscription puts you in the position of a producer. We already rely on your guys' comments for movie suggestions, but our Patreon subscribers get to pitch specific ideas you want us to go over. You want a deep dive into how realistic the tanks are in Fury? You know a fun fact about a movie that no one else seems to talk about? Or are you obsessed with that one scene in that one movie nobody talks about? As a member of our Patreon community, you get to pitch things you want us to research and talk about. Our Patreon supporters will also, of course, get end credits shoutouts on our videos and gain access to discounts on Patreon-only merch. Check out the link in the description if you want to know more. Now, back to the video. The character of Yuri Orlov is actually based on a real-life Russian gun runner, Viktor Bout. Of course, the movie couldn't openly say it's based on his life for legal reasons, but they made enough nods to it to make it obvious. Yuri is called the Merchant of Death, which was Bout's nickname in real life, and Yuri's father is called Anatoly, just like Bout's real-life father. Bout, just like Yuri, primarily made his fortune by smuggling firearms from Eastern Europe to Africa and the Middle East. When he's captured and released at the end of the movie, Yuri says that he may have been released now, but the United States will convict him for his crimes at some point. That was true, at least for Bout in real life. Where do you think he is now, though? Prison? No way. He was sent back to Russia in exchange for Brittany Griner in 2022. He is now a fairly successful politician there. That's just Russia for you. Lord of War, despite all this, shouldn't be taken for its every single word as a historically true movie. The movie is broadly accurate because it explains how the illegal gun trade works truthfully, and it paints a very realistic picture regarding the spread of Soviet weapons. However, some specifically interesting scenes, such as Yuri landing a plane on a road in Africa or him escaping arrest by quickly changing the name of his ship, should be taken as artistic liberties. The guns we see in the movie aren't props. They're characters in Yuri's life that complete his story, but despite this being a very gun-focused movie, there are still a few mistakes, mostly pertaining to timelines. We have the Micro Uzi showing up in 1984, which is impossible, and the same happens with third-generation Glock 17s. The final anachronistic mistake is the use of M16A2s, which Yuri buys in Lebanon, and on top of all that, we have the Kar 98 in Afghanistan, which might be possible, but there's not a single record of it. All of these mistakes, however, are minor. Using a weapon variant a few years too earlier isn't that immersion breaking, and it's not like they were using the completely wrong weapon, so we'll grade it with a 7 out of 10 for firearms accuracy. Unfortunately, this movie never got the attention and credit it deserved, and why do you think that is? What's the reason behind this movie's low ranking among gun movies, but movies in general as well? And what do you think of it? Also, did you know that a sequel is in the works, titled Lords of War? The script was finished around 2020, with the original writer and director Andrew Niccol leading the charge, while Cage confirmed he'd be reprising the role with Bill Skarsgård portraying his son Anton. The movie seems to be stuck in pre-production at this time though. It was supposed to start filming in 2024, but there's been no word on it since, leaving all fans wondering when, if ever, it's gonna happen. Do you think we'll actually get to see it someday? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, make sure to like and subscribe, and let us know what movie you want us to pick apart next.